So let's talk about hunger. I don't know about you, but I have always hated to be hungry. So why would I be talking about fasting then? Well, I'm going to explain that. So do you ever get hangry? I don't suffer too badly from the hangry condition, but my husband does a lot, and so do my kids. You know that when they get really just cranky and you know that they're either hungry or they're super tired, right? Do you happen to know what causes the hangry condition? Hormones. So today we're going to talk about hormones and hunger. So let's first discuss appetite versus hunger. Those two words are typically used interchangeably, but they are actually two very different things. Appetite can be driven by emotions. So if you think about it, when you're tired, bored, happy, depressed, you sometimes feel more hungry or just want to eat, sometimes just out of boredom or by something you're just used to doing. It's very emotional. Sometimes you'll eat even if you're not physically hungry. It's just something triggered something in your brain and made you want to eat. And so appetite is more an emotional feeling versus a physical one. So for example, you could lose your appetite if you're extremely stressed or depressed, or you hear something that's very tragic and you instantly lose your appetite for food. On the flip side of that, if you're happy and feeling social, you may get a sudden urge to go to a favorite restaurant with your friends or your loved ones. It's kind of out of an emotion of happiness and love. You want to eat, not necessarily because you're hungry, but because it brings out an emotion in you. So physical hunger or true hunger happens when our body's typical energy source has become depleted. Most people are used to using glucose and glycogen as their primary energy sources. It can take about 8 to 12 hours for your body to use up all of its glucose or blood sugar and glycogen stores. Glycogen is stored in the liver. After you use up all of these energy stores, your body will start to burn fat for energy instead of the glucose or glycogen. So this is one reason why intermittent fasting is so effective as a weight loss tool. When you're fasting, you may feel hunger for a bit, but then it just kind of goes away. And there's a few reasons for this. One reason is that your body is tapping into its fat stores. Yay for that. I'm happy when that happens. Unless you're extremely thin, everyone has plenty of fat stores for your body to use as energy. So another reason is ghrelin production. I talked about ghrelin in one of the past videos, if you remember. I could get really scientific here, but I think it's probably best just to keep it very simple. Ghrelin basically tells your brain it needs to store glucose in the bloodstream. So that signals the feeling of hunger because our glucose stores have been depleted after 8 to 12 hours of fasting. It's important to note here that even a small amount of food can cause ghrelin to be released. So you know how we've always heard, and I talked about this on one of my last videos, that we need to eat 6 to 8 small meals a day to keep our metabolism working, right? This is the stuff we've always heard. But think about it. When you're doing that, what you're doing is causing the ghrelin hormone to have a party in your body all day long, and so you're hungry all day long. So that makes sense to me because this is something I've experienced many times. Because even though I've known that fasting works, like I said before, I always thought that it was something I was doing that was wrong because it's not what you hear from health professionals. It's not something you hear in college. Even I have a health education degree and went through plenty of health college classes, and they never talked about fasting. It was always 6 to 8 small meals a day. And so basically what you're doing is, like I said, ghrelin is just having a party all day long. So when I've tried the 6 to 8 meals a day, it's never worked. I never lost weight, and I found myself binge eating because once I started, I couldn't stop eating. So then I would beat myself up over why I have no self-control when actually it has absolutely nothing to do with self-control and just a lot to do with regulating hormones. That's a huge relief for me. I don't know about you, but to know it has something to do with science and my body and not really me not having self-control, it gave me a sense of freedom. The other hunger hormones that are important to discuss are leptin and insulin. Leptin, if you recall, is a hunger limiting hormone. High leptin levels leads to a decrease in hunger and an increase in your metabolic rate. So there's a whole lesson about leptin, and maybe I will do a lesson dedicated to this because I think it's very important for you to understand. However, for this lesson, it's just important to know that leptin limits hunger. It is responsible for feeling satiated after a meal. Intermittent fasting has been shown to improve leptin sensitivity, which makes us less leptin resistant. I know this can be confusing, so I'm going to try to break it down for you. Basically, when you're leptin resistant, the brain stops responding to high levels of leptin being released, and you never get the signal that you're full and you need to stop eating. So the last important hunger hormone I'm going to discuss is insulin. Now, insulin is the hormone that tells our body to store fat. Insulin is higher after a meal is consumed. If you have more sugar in your body than it needs, insulin helps store it in your liver or muscle in the form of glycogen. So if your blood sugar ever becomes low, your body can get energy or glycogen from the liver. If you have a surplus of glucose, the body will not break down fat as a form of energy stores because it already has enough energy. The only time you will start actually burning your stored energy located in your fat stores is when you stop eating and allow your body to use what it has stored up. When you're constantly eating processed foods and foods high in carbohydrates, your body becomes resistant to insulin. So similar to the resistance to leptin, your body becomes resistant to insulin. So basically, you always have a high level of insulin in your body, and so you'll never be able to burn your stored body fat as energy. Okay, so I know there was a lot of information here, and some of it's very scientific, and it can be very, very confusing. But in this lesson, I just wanted to give you an overview of what hormones have an effect on your hunger. And so you might be thinking, yeah, when I've eaten a meal high in carbohydrates, I'm like hungry soon after, and that's because of hormones. Or maybe you've had a time where you have gone without food, and I think I mentioned this in one of the previous videos, but all of a sudden that hunger goes away and you kind of feel good. You have energy, you're not hungry anymore. And so that's when your body is starting to use its fat for energy instead of glucose and glycogen. So this is really exciting stuff, and I can't wait to tell you more and help you understand this, and so you can understand what is going on in your body and how you can completely change your appetite, your hunger, and your body fat, and your health. I mean, this is amazing stuff.